All right, in the last video, we started talking about pivoting, which is basically just pivoting on the balls of your feet. In the last video, we did mostly on both feet, which is a good way to start. And there are times when you're dancing when you will actually do that. However, I did mention at one point before that when you're dancing tango, you'll be spending most of your time on one foot or the other, but not necessarily both. And turning is basically applying the same sort of principle. There will be times, as I say, when you'll be on both feet, but there are plenty of opportunities to do it on one foot, and there are some times when you will have to do it on one foot. In Argentina, this gets into something that they call an enrosque, which translates as a twist turn. It's a turn which is done, again, on the ball of one foot on one spot. Around like that. Okay, and it's going to be kind of a spinning action. This is going to take a little bit of balance and a little bit of practice. But if we're practicing it, probably the easiest way is just to step into it first. And we'll step in and then just do a little bit of it. And come back. And work up until you can get a little further than that. And so we can start off with a quarter turn. We can go to a quarter turn and come back. We can do a half turn. There's a half turn. And we can come back. We can do a full turn. Something like that. Okay, we can do a three-quarter turn. There's a three-quarter turn. We can come back. We can do the same thing the other way. Step forward with the right foot. We'll pivot on the ball of the right foot this time. And we'll do a quarter turn. And then we'll do a half turn. We can do a three-quarter turn. And we can do a full turn. Okay, that particular one was a little bit sloppy towards the end, but you get the idea. Just carry on. And it's the sort of thing that, as I say, you'll have to practice to be able to do properly. Once you do, as you practice, it becomes easier, and it becomes very useful as you're doing certain things as you're dancing tango. You can also have a chance to show off to some of the people who haven't been able to figure out how to do that. Now, there are some people who are going to have particular kinds of issues with the balance while they're trying to do this. Some of them will have particular medical issues that make it very difficult. Occasionally, maybe even impossible to really do properly. But that's just something that they're putting up with. If they're going to get interested in tango, then there are ways of dealing with it that they might be able to try. Or they might find that they're interested in other things anyway, but it's up to them. If they really want to do it, there are ways of compensating for these kind of challenges. But for most people, it'll come from not having done it very much before. It might come from things like having ankles which are not quite as strong as they should be. They might be a little bit floppy up here, and so they're throwing themselves off. Their posture might be throwing themselves off. These sorts of things can be worked on. But there are a few tricks that you can consider if you do have trouble doing this with the proper balance, especially until you start getting it correctly. One of the things you can do is, I mentioned that when you're practicing this, you can step into it, and when you're doing this, normally you won't be doing it right from a standing start. You will be stepping into it usually. And so you can take advantage of that. You'll need some kind of momentum to carry yourself around. You can use your shoulders to do that sort of thing. Okay? If we think of starting with our shoulders here, and we'll turn it this way as we go around. And so, and we can use that impulse to help carry us around. Okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be much once you're turning. Another thing we can do is, as I'm stepping forward, you can see I've got my toe out a little bit in the direction that I'm going to be turning. You will hear some purists say that this is totally bad, forbidden, all the rest of this stuff. There is not actually anything wrong with this so long as you keep it within reason. If you go too far, you're going to start stressing your knee and give yourself injuries. You don't want to go that far. But just enough so that you're starting to cut into some of the turn that you're going to have to do. You can see it's also turning my body a little bit, so I'm not having to turn my body quite as far. If I'm doing a quarter turn, I don't actually have very far to turn. If I'm doing a half turn, here I'm going into it, and it's fairly simple. Okay? So that's one thing you can do, is you can lead into it, and so you're basically starting, it's almost like cheating a little bit, but it's not actually cheating. It's a sort of thing which is perfectly legitimate, usually. You just have to be careful how far you go. Another thing is, with your posture, as you work on this stuff, you may have to fiddle with your posture, have someone look at you and see if you're straight and all the rest of this stuff, and gradually work on getting your posture so that you can feel when it's correct. But you're going to be stretched upward, but we're not actually stretching up into the sky, which is the natural thing some people do when they're trying to do this sort of a turn. Okay, when they start turning, they're going to go up like this, and that's exactly what throws them all over the place. What you want to do is have your weight go down towards the ground, so you stay very grounded. And to do that, the easy way is if you breathe in, and then you breathe out, and you probably notice my shoulders dropping as I did that. And so if we do that as we're turning, we'll find it's a lot easier to stay stable. So I'm going to breathe in, and then breathe out, and you find it a lot more stable. Another thing you can do is, here we're spinning on the one foot. Okay, if I'm going to the left, I'll be on my left foot. If I'm going to the right, I'll be on the right. Here I'm going to be on my left foot. The right foot doesn't have to be up in the air. It does not. And it can be helpful if it is sitting just nicely on the ground with no weight on it, so you can still lift it up. But it's there, so if you start toppling that way, then you can use it to stop yourself from toppling. And with that foot dragging around on the ground, you'll find it's easier to keep yourself stable. So, something like that. So that's something you can try. You can even walk yourself around if you're doing a big turn and you can't actually do the turn as a full circle. And so we'll put the foot out here, and then I'll just walk myself around while I'm balanced on this foot. If you see some of the old videos of a guy named Carlos Cavito, you'll see he sometimes does that with his partner. So that's something you can try if you have to go further. Okay, so that's some tricks for keeping your balance. Another one is just keep your weight spread out further so you have basically a bigger top, and so you're not going to topple as much. So if you think of having your arms out or your elbows out, And you can use that to help keep yourself stable as well, at least until you get going. It's harder to do that on the dance floor, but while you're practicing, that can be a big help. So that's some things you can try while you're spinning on one foot or the other foot, either way. And you'll find those can really help you. And you'll have a lot of use for them as you're dancing.